Mountain, Island, Lightning Bolt, Spell Pierce, Switchblade, Stab Wound, Red Mage, Blue Mage.
Hit it, Johnny.
Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum.
Yeah, let it ride. Let it roll. It's Red Mage, Blue Mage time. I'm Kenny, and I play blue.
I'm Amber, and I play red.
Wow.
I was gonna go lager, but your face looked very upset.
No, that was very enthusiastic. That's what I want out of a co-host. Enthusiasm.
I'm always enthusiastic. I know what you're talking about. It sounds like you're saying that I'm not enthusiastic most of the time.
Yeah, you're passionate. You definitely got... That's a red trait that you definitely have.
Passion, fire, passion.
I have phlegm and plenty to spare. That's
Gross.
any
Delete
consolation.
That. Edit out. God!
Okay, so, yeah, it's magic time. When was the last time we actually recorded an episode?
3 years ago.
Has it actually been like a month?
It's been 4 years.
It's been a long time. Longer than we've been recording, apparently.
Yes.
And unlike the last few times we recorded, we actually have played Magic in the meantime.
Yes, this is true.
Lots
lot.
of Magic. Yeah.
Tons of magic. So much magic.
So much that we need to catch up.
I'm caught.
In the Magic Catch-Up Storm.
Brum, 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 brum. We're playing Magic. Oh my god.
The Magic Catch-Up Storm. Jeep shop, jeep shop. Yeah, we've played a bunch of Magic.
Most recently, I played Magic last night, where I tried to play my commander again, and I got my ass handed to me by Brandon's Dinosaur Enraged deck.
Dino DNA.
And then also playing some standard decks, like the ones that are like pre-constructed in Arena right now.
Okay.
But we've made them physical, or I should say I've done nothing.
Just play them.
I just play them. Played the Gruul one, and the Boros one. I like them both.
I didn't realize that's what those... Because I saw images and videos, but I didn't realize that they were standard-ish decks.
Yeah, if you follow my Twitter at Rocket Orca, sometimes you'll get these sweet, sweet gems of me posting videos of the voices I make for the creature cards I cast.
Yeah. Pelt Collector, I believe.
Yes, I can't remember how I did his voice. It was like, I'm the pelt collector. I've come to collect your pelts.
Yeah.
Pelts, please.
That's it.
There it is. Yes.
Pelts, please.
Pelts, please. Which is my favorite thing to do in Magic is make up stories and voices for the cards that I get.
Yes. Also, pretty much any game that you play.
Yeah. Anything that has an image of a person or a creature, I'm going to make a voice for it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to heal you.
Healer's Hawk, yes.
So you played some standard.
Yes.
Did you get your ass beat in that as well?
No. It was like even. I think it was 2-2.
Okay. But Commander you're not happy with.
My Commander deck I am not happy with, no. It is...
This is the Duretti deck, right?
Yes, this is my Duretti. I only have one Commander deck, and yeah, it's just like... So I guess, like, well, let's just say that when I'm in a multiplayer Commander game, I usually come in second because I'm such a non-threat throughout the game that, like, nobody...
You just fly under the radar the whole time.
Nobody cares. Nobody wants to deal with me because I'm not a threat. I'm not which is funny because I like to play aggressive decks. It's just like it's so few and far between with this Commander deck because it's mostly just like swapping out stuff in my graveyard and making things and I'm just like building up mana for these giant burn spells I have. Right.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because there's some dyssynergy going on with your deck. Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, it's funny because you introduced in some of the goblins and the burn stuff because you didn't have enough going on early on to protect Duretti.
Yes.
And now it feels like you're kind of divided.
Yeah, and it really showed through last night in my Commander game, but also when we were in Scotland, because Kenny and I went to Scotland for a weekend with friends playing games at a manor house in Dumfries. And we played a 5.
We played a couple of 5-person Commander games.
Yes, and each time it was literally like I was not a threat. You kept getting killed. It was like Rob was getting killed off, and then
First.
you.
Yes.
And then
I guess we should take a step back here.
Yeah.
So the setup was you and I had both brought decks because we expected to play in airports and at the event itself.
Right.
I brought my Mimeoplasm deck,
Yeah.
which started off as a precon, but has been modified over time. You have your Dreddy deck, kind of the same deal.
Yeah.
And then a
Rob
guy named Rob brought a bunch of precon decks.
Yeah, because he lives in France and his parents bought what he needed. I don't know. It was a weird
exchange
that happened between multiple countries to get him the 2018 and the new 2019 pre-con commander decks.
So he had 8 commander decks that he brought with him.
Yes, which some of them had to be sleeved.
Yes.
And then we had 2 other players, Scottish Amber and English Johnny.
English Johnny.
Because at this event, there are always duplicates or triplicates of people
names.
of names. There was 3 Johnnies or Johns, and 2 Ambers, 2 Charles. Yeah.
There's one other overlap. 2 Beccas.
2 Beccas. Yeah, 2 Rebeccas. So
out of 20 people.
I know. 2 Tonys.
That's
Anthony
right,
and
that's right.
Anthony and Anthony.
That's right.
So yeah, Scottish Amber and English Johnny, because there's a Scottish Johnny and then there's a Texan John.
English Johnny is a great name, I feel
I
like.
think so too. So they hadn't really played Commander before, so it was a new experience for them.
Right. They brought standard decks that they were
Yes.
playing.
Yeah, standard and whatever.
Standard-ish.
Modern and
Yeah.
modern.
Yeah.
And so they got to choose from the precons that
Right.
Rob brought.
And Johnny wound up picking a morph-based deck,
Yes.
and Amber picked up
Populate.
a populate deck. That's right. That's right. A legend that made a 4/4 Rhino token and populated when it attacked.
Yes.
So just churning out rhinos. That's right.
Right.
And basically, yeah, the way that the games wound up playing out, because we basically played 2 rounds, and both of them took multiple hours.
God.
As a Commander game does.
Oh, God.
The way the games turned out is it felt like me and Rob were arms race against each other.
Yes.
And basically fighting amongst ourselves, targeting each other. I would kill Rob first, and then I was left with nothing, and I would die.
Yes.
And then it turned into you, Amber, other Amber, and English Johnny fighting for
Which meant
victory.
Amber, Scottish Amber, just destroyed us both.
Right. Right. Each time, yeah. Very true. Yeah, I felt like I was happy with how my deck performed. It definitely made me think so much of Commander. It's so relative to what kind of meta you find yourself in. I think Commander's at its most fun when everybody in a given group is trying to balance out their power level and what their decks are doing with the other people around them. Not trying to be better than everybody else, but just trying to be on an even footing. That's the most fun.
Right.
And I don't think my Mimeoplasm is anything insane or broken, but I do think that its power level compared to the rest of the table was a little higher up there, because somebody at some point made a comment, and this was true, that every time it would come to my turn, I would play something that then the rest of the table had to be well, we have to deal with this threat that just landed,
Right.
or else we're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
And that didn't feel I didn't like that especially either. I would rather be on even footing, and it's the self-balancing mechanism of Commander. If you're the big threat, people will gang up on you in a
Right.
Commander game.
Well, it's so funny because I remember this one time you had this thing that happened where it was a triggered ability or something, and it was destroy target arch something, and you're I don't really want to hurt anybody. I destroy my own. I was Bullshit! Destroy my shit! What are you doing? Don't feel bad for us. Just do it. There's 4 of us. We're gonna murder you. Just wait. Don't worry. That cracked me up. I was like, what is this? Mr. I always play to win. Yeah, right. Don't even.
I mean, I feel like, I don't know, Commander's just a different beast. Like, you and I have talked about this, probably on the show, I think, where if you're sitting down, this is like an Aaron Forsyth quote, like, if you're playing Commander and your goal is just to win, there's all kinds of insane broken shit you can do.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not fun. Like,
right.
It doesn't make for a fun time for anybody at the table.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't generally play my Arkham Daxon deck, because it's a tutoring commander that always plays out exactly the same way. It just wants to get these 2 cards, put them into play, and win the game.
Right.
And it's just, it sucks.
Yeah, so playing that, though, like, for me, it wasn't, I had fun.
Oh, for sure.
But at the same time, I was really struggling with, like, how sad my commander deck is. It's just pathetic, honestly. I wasn't doing anything. Well, it didn't help
that compete.
Yeah, and it didn't help that I just kept drawing fucking lands too. It was like a couple times I was just like, I drew like 6 lands in a row. I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? I can't do anything.
The thing about your deck, it definitely has like some explosive draws.
Yes.
Where it can pop off and do insane things.
Yeah.
But when it doesn't do that, it kind of just doesn't do anything.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm currently in the process of putting together my Nicol Bolas Commander deck, and I think it's going to be very similar to that, where it, most of the time it just doesn't do things. So it'll be a slow process of tuning it to a place where I'm happy about it.
We'll have to do that for a construction whatever segment.
Construction Zone.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember. We haven't done that in a while.
No, it's been a minute.
So other Magic I've played in whenever we've talked about Magic.
Weeks ago, yeah.
God. Oh, yeah, it was right before Scotland trip. So
yeah,
I went to the Throne of Eldraine pre-release event.
Which, by the time this episode comes out, will have been 2.5 years ago.
Yes, exactly. Because we've already got announced the next sets that are coming out here soon.
Right.
So anyway, so Throne of Eldraine pre-release. Went into it. There was not as many people as the M20.
Really?
Yeah, it was a lot smaller.
That's surprising.
And I did terrible. Like last pre-release M20, I did like really well. I placed 4th or 5th out of like
50 people.
50, 40, I can't remember how many it was. But anyway, this time I'm pretty sure I came like 3rd. Third to last.
Oh, I was like, 3rd's pretty great.
No, 3rd to last.
Out of how many?
I want to say there's probably like 30 or so, maybe 40, like 30-ish. It was smaller than M20. The sealed format is definitely hard.
Yeah, I'm not a super big fan of it.
To construct from. And especially with this set, it was like I was so tempted by food token generation.
Yeah.
And let's say, okay, so I was looking at my cards, and I usually just go with what I have multiples of to begin with. Like, okay, look at what I have multiples of. With a 40 card deck, I'm just trying to be like, how can I be consistent? How can I get things? And I had 4 1 black mana cost flying imp fairy things. 4 of them. That what they did was when they attacked or did damage, I think everybody had to discard a card.
Okay. Which
would have been a great in combo with this. I can't remember what the creature card is, but he's a black card. It's a knight, I think. Internet, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically he has this ability where it's like when a creature card goes into the graveyard from anywhere, the other player takes damage.
Okay.
So it would have been like amazing. Like, here's these little 4 1/1 fly or 1 cost. I had 4 copies of a 1 cost 1/1 flyer that did this ability where it did damage. You discard a card, and creature cards could go in. But I didn't get that card. Went up against 3 other people who had that card, but I didn't get it. And I was like, okay. So anyway, I'm like, okay, cool. I have this potential like discard milling strategy. I've got some interesting blue cards, but I hate playing mill control. So fuck that. I'm gonna go black, white, green, and do a pump up my knights and sacrifice to do damage, artifact, whatever. And it was a fucking mess. Every game was such a fucking slog. It just hurt. Like, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. The first game got owned. Second game, the only reason why I won, the second match of the game, the only reason why I won is because he had a mulligan down to 5. And then it just became like, it took so long that first game that we just...
Do you feel like the presence of food tokens makes the games drag on? Because both players are kind of gaining a lot of incidental life.
It's not, we were even using them for life. It was just like...
all the other things you were doing with them?
Yeah, like sacrificing them to pump and whatever. Second, and everybody that I went against was white, black, something. White, black, something, white, black, something. Because knights, I don't know. I think just how the sealed
just the
went.
knights were good.
Yeah. Only the last person I did was red, white, black, and then I swapped...
which are the knight colors, right?
Yes. And then I swapped out my green for blue because I had flyers and there's a good owl in there, another good blue card, and I was like, I got to do this. And so, like, after
blue,
yeah, fuck off. After I got home, because by the way, playing I can't be competitive Magic. Remember how the beginning was like, oh, I could do competition. I could be. I spent 6 to 4 hours playing Magic, and I basically had a migraine when I got back, and I wanted to throw up, and I couldn't even eat food. I was dying. I just sadly sucked on an apple in bed and tried to eat it without vomiting. This is how much damage Magic did to my brain that night. So after 2 days of rest and recovery, I dismantled my deck and then looked at the actual cards, and I realized I had a fairly strong blue-black mill control deck that I should have fucking built.
That was lurking in your sealed pool.
Yes, but I was too distracted by knights and green
and pie
that I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, that'll happen. I feel like I had 2 comments here. So one specific about Eldraine, which is that I feel like sealed is a really weird fit for Eldraine because part of the point of Eldraine is it has this focus on monocolor.
Yes.
Like the adamant mechanic.
Yes,
and
yes.
Other things that want to push you to be monocolor or strongly leaning on one color. In sealed, that's like impossible.
It's so
you just have
hard.
You just have a mishmash of cards.
Like, you're lucky if you have a tight 2-color deck.
And you'll likely have 3.
Yes, and most often you see 2 with a splash or a 3-color deck.
Right.
Because of that reason. Because you're opening, 6 booster packs?
Right.
And you get what you get. You can't... That's what you have to work with.
And there's not a ton of fixing in this set either for color.
No.
Again, because they're pushing to be monocolored. Mm-hmm. The other comment I was going to make was more generally about sealed, which I am not a big fan of sealed compared to draft because you have so little control over your destiny. Like, you just here are your cards.
Yeah.
And you're just stuck with them. You didn't make any choices about these cards.
Right. So yeah, it was definitely a hard pre-release, and I'll keep going to pre-release events. I think they're very fun, and we're also making friends at the local game shop, which is pretty nice. Seeing familiar faces over and over again.
Yeah.
Asking us, are you going to do Friday Night Magic? Are you going to do Friday Night Magic? You should come do Friday Night Magic. And I'm like, ugh.
I have a migraine.
I have things to do. But
it's kind of nice the pre-release because that way, they're infrequent enough that you're not taxing your body horribly every week by going to these things.
I'm going to have to, like, start some sort of regimen of, like, hydrating and bringing Gatorade and...
Caffeine.
Yeah, just to, like, doing
Power
these...
through.
Yeah. It can be very stressful. But yeah, so that was my Eldraine experience. Yeah.
Well, I think if you take the average of your last 2 pre-release, you're doing pretty average.
Mediocre.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Really good one time, and not as good the other time. It's funny, I don't think you had told me what place you had gotten, so you're like, I did so horrible. I got 3rd from last. Well, let us move on to our next topic, and hopefully this discussion will help you next time you go into pre-release, because we're going to be talking about strategy.
There's no helping me.
Let's have a discussion, shall we?
Okay.
Once again, it's time for an academic debate between a civilized scholar and a homicidal brute. Let's begin.
So, the topic for today's Civilized Scholar Homicidal Brute actually comes to us from my friend Seth, who was on the show a while ago, doing some cube drafts. And while we were playing, I think we were playing another game off the air while he was over here. And he asked me while we were playing, how far ahead, or how many turns ahead, or just in general, how far ahead are you thinking while you're playing a game of Magic? And I thought it was a really good question. So, like, you're looking at your hand, you're looking at what's going on. How far ahead are you, Amber, planning or thinking? I see your forehead wrinkling
Well, I guess
up.
it depends on the when in the game too, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously the first couple turns, I'm not really thinking that far ahead.
No?
I don't think so. I mean, depends on, again, the deck. Like, what specific format are we talking about?
Could be any. Which ones do you want to talk about? What makes a difference?
Well, for me, it's like with a deck that you play often, that you know, that you've constructed yourself, and it's like your standard deck or your commander deck or your whatever. Mm-hmm. You know what's going to be in there, and you kind of know, like, the flow of that deck.
You've played it a lot.
You know, like, when you get your opening hand, you're like, ooh, okay, cool. Maybe if I drop this land and do this way, then by turn whatever, especially if you have, like, tap lands or shock lands or whatever, that kind of stuff, like, you tend to think maybe
you're planning out your first few
turns. And so, yeah, I definitely do that when we opening hand, and depending on what lands you get, yeah, I'll probably think ahead maybe 1 to 2 turns. But I think if you have a deck that you, like I said, use often, you could probably think out further. Like, especially in a standard deck where you have, or, just a constructed for modern whatever, where you can run multiple copies.
Right.
You're like, okay, well, I already drew 2 Healer's Hawks in this hand, so my odds of getting it, blah, 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 or whatever, changes. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of why I think there's a difference. Like, a Commander, like, every time I've played Commander with a deck that I know, it's always been like... I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5. What am I going to draw next? Oh, maybe I'll get to do this.
It's 100 cards where you have no repeats.
Right. I think it's not uncommon to think, at least for me, to think 3 to 4 steps ahead when I get my opening hand.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Because, I mean, one, you're looking at your opening hand, and you should be thinking about, assuming nothing else, assuming that my draw steps are not going to help me at all.
Right.
Like, what's going to happen? Like, I think that's a really important thing, where you look at your hand, and I think that's, like, one of the first level ups that you can do as a Magic player. Because everybody at first, you're just looking at, like, how many lands do I have, basically.
Right.
That determines, can I keep this hand? And then one of the first level ups is looking beyond that and being like, what can I play given the lands in my hand right now?
Right. I mean, going back to Magic Ketchup Storm and the Magic I played last night, it definitely was one of those things where I had a hand where I would have kept land-wise. It was like, okay, I got 3 lands in a red-green deck. Cool. Right. But every other card that I had in my hand was like 4 more 4 or more to cast. In fact, the
Right.
highest one was like a 7 cost. I was like, well, fuck that. I'm mulligan. I'm
Right.
gonna mulligan because I can't conceivably do anything for 4 turns.
Right. And maybe you'll get lucky and draw some early plays, but you shouldn't rely on that.
But I'm not banking on that. No.
No. So I think that's smart to be thinking about how are your first few turns going to play out. And I think it's also important to be thinking about what could I draw, because you were talking about tapped lands and playing out your lands. I think one important thing to do as far as thinking ahead a few turns is looking at what you have in your hand, thinking about what you might draw, and how the lands matter. So
Right.
if you're in, let's say, a blue-white deck, and you've got Counterspell in your hand, the classic Counterspell, 2 blue mana,
Yeah.
or even a better example, you don't have Counterspell in your hand, but you have it in your deck. You want to make sure, if possible, that you're playing lands where if you draw Counterspell on turn 2, you'll be able to cast it. So you don't
Right.
want to lead with a white land, assuming
Yes.
you have nothing else to do. Even though you don't have the Counterspell, you could draw into it. And so there are a lot of times, I feel like the times when you and I are playing on this show, and I say, oh crap, I misplayed. That's almost always what it is, where I played a land out of sequence, and then I draw the card that it matters that I played that land out of sequence.
Right. Or tapped the wrong.
Right.
Like, so it's like definitely, it's like, again, going back to last night, like I'm now noticing, like I'm thinking things through better and tapping the right lands. I had a knight in the Boros deck where basically he had a cost ability, no tap, just pay a red and a white, and then he gains first strike till the end of a turn. And so I specifically tapped to play something that had haste, made him attack, and I lured my victim into my trap, and they blocked with thinking, oh, I'm gonna block this 3/3 with my 3/4, and we're just gonna trade. And I was like, haha, I left 2 of the correct mana up, and he has first strike now.
It's first stricken.
Get struck. And yeah,
Smart.
so, and I'm like, yes. And so, yeah, so it's definitely that kind of stuff too. It's like, you have to, and then after that I said, damn, Magic's a stupid complicated game.
It is. I think when Seth asked me that question, another thing I was thinking of was the thing I do the most often as far as thinking ahead is making these cost-benefit analyses where I've got a removal spell in hand, let's say, and my opponent has something on the board that I could get rid of with this thing. But I'm sitting there thinking, I can live I can live several more turns with this thing attacking me. And what if my opponent plays something even worse that I can't manage?
Right.
I want to hold this back then.
And I think another thing too is also, like, one of my favorite games to play is Mahjong on my phone. And Japanese Mahjong, not like the matching tiles thing.
No.
This is like poker Mahjong.
This is gambling parlor,
Yes.
goblin mahjong.
If you're into Mahjong, I highly suggest watching Akagi, which is an anime based off of a manga that took completely, just hooked my brain. But it's all about like reading your opponent too, right? So, and understanding, oh, you're playing blue-black. You have mana up right now, you piece of shit. I know what you're going to potentially do.
Don't look
so
at me
am
so
I
accusingly.
going to waste trying to cast this spell, or
Hell
do
no.
I wait until you tap out more mana and you don't have at least 2 up to counterspell or whatever the fuck?
Right.
And same goes with the green player too. It's like, oh, you're going to declare blockers? Is this person going to fucking grow their fucking monster by like 4+4+2, and then they have trample now?
Right.
How much mana do you have up? How much mana do they have up? And are they smiling to themselves as they clutch their cards closer to their chest?
Right. Or thinking about, like you brought up counterspells, like not just thinking about, I don't want to run my spell into their counterspell, but even more thinking like, I'm going to run my slightly shitty spell and draw out their counterspell, and then I'll set up my next turn.
Yes. That's another thing too as well. Like,
Yes.
Strategy.
I think one thing that I've given a lot of thought to when it comes to these games, so I have watched and I have forced you to watch a lot of videos about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
For a long time, like the gold standard that they were trying to get to was, teaching AIs to beat the best human players at chess. That was like the 60s and 70s. Yeah. And then they cleared that bar. And I watched a great video about it. And then the next thing after that for a long time was Go.
Yes.
And that only recently they cracked that. And they've done it. There's AlphaGo. And I think it's called AlphaZero maybe. But they do these two AIs that now could beat the best human players at Go. And this video I was watching that was explaining how this thing worked, it stepped back and looked at a game like tic-tac-toe. Humans can learn how to play tic-tac-toe optimally.
Yes.
And the reason is it's such a simple game that you can play forward all the way to the end. You can imagine in your head what will happen. If I go here, they're going to go here, and then I would go here, and you can get all the way to the end. You can't do that with chess. Computers can't even do that with chess. And Go is even worse.
Yeah.
There's more possibilities than particles in the universe, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so instead what you have to do is you have to give the AI heuristics. You have to give it general guidelines that help it make decisions and just peek a few turns ahead. So things like, it's bad to lose your queen.
Yeah.
That's not always true. Sometimes it's smart to lose your queen, but it's a good heuristic. Yeah. And I feel like Magic is all about that, training your brain to know these little shorthands, these little heuristics. That's why card advantage becomes a concept. There's no rule about the person with the most cards who drew the most cards in the game wins. But it's generally true.
Just statistically, yeah. Especially mulliganing.
Yeah,
down,
absolutely.
You lose statistically, yeah.
So I think that it becomes this mini game of, I'm thinking, just like in a game of chess, where it's I'm playing this little mini game to try to capture my opponent's knight.
Right.
In Magic, it might be a mini game. How do I get a card advantage out of this situation in the next few turns? How do I block in an advantageous way that opens up my opponent?
I just keep thinking right now about all the effort and resources and time and programming that went into making Arena or even Magic Online, where it's just this game is just so ridiculously complicated.
I know.
And it's
amazing that the programs work at all.
I know. I was thinking recently, I watched a video recently about them developing it. I think it was
really?
Did you know gaming channel had a video about Magic Arena.
Oh, cool.
And so check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was talking specifically about when they were developing and trying to have AI AI to do the training program. Because you play against when you first start playing Magic Arena, they have some bots that help you play Magic.
Right.
And they were doing things like they would play cards that were they end up just killing themselves because they just kept destroying their own stuff because they didn't realize they just I can play this.
Right.
Oh, got to destroy my own shit because nothing else is out there. But it's just like when you first start playing Magic anyway, right? It's oh shit. I played this card and it's not may destroy, it says destroy.
Right. Or it's even to me, the biggest, the most common mistake that new Magic players make is they're overly cautious. I've played against so many new Magic players who are in a winning position. They could just attack and over the course of 2 turns win the game. And they're just they just see all the math in front of them for swinging. And they're afraid of what you have in your hand. They're just I hold back.
Well, and I think that's as you play more and more, that ability to think
you get
ahead,
those heuristics, right?
You're right. So it's oh, well, I'm looking at you. I have all these creatures out right now, and you have some blockers. Yeah, it's just I'm not afraid to attack. Actually, I would rather just attack so that you could. Well, it's definitely things too where it's you start learning when to do certain instances and when to do certain sorceries and stuff because
totally.
I remember even last night where I was trying to figure out what would be the most most opportune or cost efficient or most efficient way to play this, growth spell, and, how, well, it made more sense to let this creature die even though I would give it trample because only 2 would go through. So let that creature die, let the smaller one go, and get what, Kenny?
I'm enjoying listening to your math.
What?
It's good. Go ahead.
So it's like, because like the fear of losing a creature, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we're going to trade blows anyway, and I'm going to die anyway.
Totally.
Even if I do trample because my butt didn't get big. It was just the power. So let that one die, and then let the 2/1 get the bonus, so I do 6 damage straight to that person's face.
Yeah.
Instead of doing 2, doing 4. Yeah.
Right. Learning what resources are worth trading. Like, one of the most simple ones that you learn early on is that your life total is almost irrelevant. Like, as long as you have life total, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like, trading life for cards or life for mana, it's something you're so afraid of when you first start, and it's like, that's like one of the best things that you can do, basically.
Right. I love it when I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll take the 8 damage right now, because I know that you're going to be tapped out, and then this next turn, I'm going to have X is going to happen, and I'm going to do so much more and have so much more on the board that I'm not even going to worry about it next turn.
I'll play this card that will make it so that I'm unassailable after that.
Right.
I'll completely stabilize, for sure.
Life.
Life's just a resource, you know?
Indeed.
I was trying to think. I feel like there's one other thing I wanted to say regarding stratagems, magic stratagems.
Okay, well, I have one thing.
Okay, go.
Or especially specifically for like sealed or drafting, where it's like, I just talked about how I totally did not pick. I didn't go the route I should have went when I had the cards in front of me because I don't like playing a certain play style.
Right.
And so I am like, no, I refuse to do blue-black. I'm going to do the colors that I feel good about because that's the play style I like to play, which is token generation and antheming and that kind of crap.
Right.
And it really hurt me. I could have had a competitive edge, but I
pushed blinders on.
I push in favor of what I enjoy generally.
Right.
Which is not always the most strategic thing to do.
Right. It depends on what your goal is. Like we were talking about earlier in the show. Like if you're playing Commander, you have different goals than if you're at a pre-release and you're like, I would like to do well. Mm-hmm. And you and I have talked about the adage that you don't decide what you're drafting. The draft decides what you're drafting.
Yep.
And that's especially true in sealed, like where you have so little control over what your pool is. You have no control over what your pool is. And then you really do have to let the cards guide you into your decision. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's something I could learn to get better at as well. Like just the number of times I do a cube draft and I wind up in Esper control. It's like I've designed my cube so that Esper, like control is not just the end all be all. I know it's not. I've gotten beat by other things plenty of times. But the fact that I lean so hard into it whenever I play tells me that I am letting my biases get the best of me.
Right.
You know? I should be playing other strategies. Although it's interesting when it comes to drafting, when you're doing a cube draft with the same group of friends over and over again, people kind of land in their niches. And if I was with my friends and I started drafting like red, white, black tokens, I would find myself competing with Jaren and Troy, who would be also fighting over the exact same cards, you know?
Yeah.
And so like there's this weird meta that evolves where, wow, blue cards are always available. I guess I'll take them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that happens too.
Yeah. Metas. That should be a discussion for another time, though, is talking about metas. All kinds of stuff we could discuss there.
There's like an endless bucket of discussion topics we have because this game is endless.
It's so big, yeah. Well, we'll save that for another day, I guess.
Yeah, it's been about 40 minutes, which is almost maxing out my brain capacity, and I can start to feel the nausea coming on.
I thought you were going to say I can feel the dendrons firing and shutting off.
Jeeb-bob,
jeeb-job, jeeb-job. All right, well, we'll end the episode there then. If you want to email us with your own topics, please do. We are redmagebluemage@geekspective.com. You can tweet at me, Kenny, at Wolfmere.
You can tweet at me at Rocket Orca.
And until next time, I will be representing Counterspell.
My brain's fried. What do I have? I got the bolt.
There you go. Well done.
Good job, me.